Welcome to another custom-tailored deep dive. If you're joining us today, you are probably someone who loves to peel back the layers of the things we usually just, take for granted.
Absolutely.
You are definitely in the right place because our mission today is to look at a very brief narrative text. It's a classic piece of comedic fiction, and we are going to completely dissect it.
We're going to extract those hidden nuggets of insight about human logic.
Right, human logic, pattern recognition, and those weird linguistic traps that are buried right there in the text.
Could be fun.
Yeah, we have a sole, highly intriguing source material provided for today's session. It's a short excerpt titled The Linguistic Limitations of the Third Potato.
Which is just a fantastic title.
It really is. And to fulfill the specific focus for this deep dive, I am going to read our source material exactly as it is written from start to finish right now. Here we go.
Let's hear it.
3 women escape from prison and are hiding in a barn when the police come to search it. They decide to each hide in a gunny sack. One policeman checked out the gunny sacks one at a time. He nudged the first one with his boot. The brunette said, "Woof." The policeman muttered, "Oh, it's just a dog." He then went to the second gunny sack. When he nudged it, the ginger said, "Meow." "Oh, it's just a cat," the policeman muttered. Finally, he nudged the final sack, at which point the blonde said, "Potatoes."
It is such a brilliantly concise piece of writing. It really accomplishes a lot in just a handful of sentences.
I know, it's funny because it's just a terrible disguise, but you really have to admire the sheer panic of it all. Okay, let's unpack this. I want you, the listener, to really imagine being in that barn.
Put yourself right in that space.
Exactly. Put yourself in that physical space for a second. The stakes are unbelievably high. We are talking about a prison escape. There is an active police search happening in real time. Freedom and incarceration are hanging in the balance. And this incredibly high-stakes situation is juxtaposed with the absolute lowest tech disguise imaginable.
Hiding inside a scratchy, dirty gunny sack.
It's a wild setup.
What's fascinating here is that while this is clearly a joke on the surface, beneath it lies a perfectly constructed scenario for analyzing crisis decision-making and the suspicion of disbelief.
Yeah, completely.
The scene immediately strips away all external complexity. We aren't bogged down with the backstory of their crimes.
Or the layout of the prison.
Right, or the logistics of the police perimeter. The narrative forces us to focus entirely on one thing, which is quick thinking under extreme pressure. We're watching the human brain try to problem solve when the adrenaline is absolutely through the roof.
And let's actually think about the physical reality of that desperate disguise. The decision to use a gunny sack in a barn.
It's quite a visual.
The absurdity of the visual is staggering if you stop to picture it. You have 3 adult women, presumably exhausted from a prison break, trying to physically contort themselves into burlap sacks that are designed to hold crops or feed.
It's physical comedy before anyone even says a word.
It really is. They are voluntarily blinding themselves, restricting their movement, and completely putting their fate into the hands of this improvised, lumpy camouflage.
Which brings us to the antagonist of the text, the sole policeman. The text highlights a very specific methodology he uses to conduct his search.
Right, the nudging.
Yes, he checks the sacks, as the text notes, one at a time, and he nudges them with his boot. That is a critical detail.
He's not exactly being thorough.
No, he is not bending down. He's not untying the top of the sacks. He isn't shining a flashlight inside. He is just using his foot.
But wait, is he actually being lazy here? Or is his brain just being efficient? Because if you are doing a high-stress sweep of a dark barn, you have to rely on heuristics, right?
That makes sense.
You can't forensically examine every single piece of hay.
That's a really good distinction to make. It's less about laziness and more about cognitive load. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the cop is practically begging for confirmation bias here.
Oh, totally.
He's in a barn, he expects to find barn things, so when he interacts with the environment, his brain just auto-fills the rest of the picture so he doesn't have to do the hard work of investigating.
Exactly. It reminds me of when you hear a floorboard creak in your house at 2 in the morning.
Oh yeah, the worst.
Your brain immediately says, oh, it's just the house settling, or it's just the wind. You don't want it to be a burglar, so you accept the mundane explanation because it allows you to go back to sleep.
You rationalize it.
Right. The policeman isn't necessarily looking for escapees. On a subconscious level, he might just be looking for a reason to stop looking.
Precisely. If he finds them, he has to apprehend 3 desperate fugitives all by himself. His subconscious probably wants it to be a dog. By choosing to nudge the sacks with his boot, his actions establish the rules of this narrative universe. He is relying entirely on oral feedback sound
Yep.
rather than visual confirmation.
He provides a physical stimulus, the nudge, and waits for the environment to explain itself.
Exactly.
And that perfectly sets up the first deception. Let's look at the brunette's strategy. The policeman nudges her sacs and she barks. Woof.
It's so fast.
You really have to admire the quick pivot here. In a fraction of a second, she evaluates her environment, understands she's completely blind and trapped in a bag, and produces a sound that satisfies the investigator without requiring him to look closer.
She adapts instantly.
She realizes she can't be a passive, inanimate object because a sack of feed wouldn't react to a kick. So she chooses an act of disguise. She becomes a living creature.
And we see the immediate success of that strategy in the policeman's muttered reaction, "Oh, it's just a dog."
Farm dogs sleep in barns all the time.
Exactly. A dog in a barn is highly plausible. More importantly, it explains the physical resistance the policeman felt when his boot hit the sack, and it explains the noise. The brunette successfully recognized the parameters of the test she was being given.
Right. She didn't need to miraculously look like a dog. She just needed to provide the correct audio data point to satisfy the policeman's preconceived notions of what belongs in a barn.
She fed his confirmation bias the exact meal it was craving. And the muttering is a vital detail. He mutters it to himself.
He's self-soothing almost.
Yes, he is actively verbalizing his own rationalization. By saying it out loud, he is officially closing the mental file folder on that particular gunny sack.
Then we move to the second sack. The ginger woman is up next. She receives the nudge, and she mimics a cat. Meow.
A very logical next step.
This is a crucial moment because it solidifies the pattern. One instance is a fluke, but 2 data points create a trend. The ginger woman heard the brunette strategy, saw that it worked, and iterated on it beautifully.
She kept the same broad category, which is domestic barn animal, but varied the specific output just enough to remain plausible.
Right, because 2 dogs in separate bags would be weird.
Exactly. If there are 2 sacks, they probably wouldn't both be dogs. But a dog and a cat, that makes perfect environmental sense. She's playing into the established rules of the game perfectly.
I want to pause here and talk directly to you, the listener. Think about how you process information when you're busy or distracted.
We all do it.
Maybe you are rushing through your inbox, or you're trying to find your keys while mentally planning a meeting. You look for recognizable patterns so you can move on to the next task.
You're filtering.
Right. You aren't critically analyzing every single email header. You're just looking for the ones that fit the pattern of needs immediate attention versus junk. That is exactly what is happening in this barn. The brunette and the ginger flawlessly exploited the policeman's desire for an easy, recognizable pattern.
They absolutely did. They essentially offloaded their own danger onto his cognitive shortcuts.
That is a great way to put it.
They understood that humans are pattern-seeking machines. When we are presented with a pattern that makes logical sense in our current context, we rarely stop to interrogate the individual components.
You just accept the whole package.
Yes. The policemen have a working theory of his environment, and the environment is providing data that matches his theory perfectly. So he mutters, "Oh, it's just a cat," and moves on.
Here's where it gets really interesting. We reach the climax of the narrative. We are at the final sack. The tension has been building. The policeman has been successfully duped twice.
He's totally bought in.
He steps up to the third sack. He nudges it with his boot, just like the others. And the blonde loudly declares, "Potatoes."
This is the moment that gives the excerpt its provided title, "The Linguistic Limitations of the Third Potato."
It's the perfect crash.
Let's dissect exactly where the blonde's cognitive framing failed here. Under the extreme pressure of the moment, her brain recognized that a pattern had been established, but she fundamentally misunderstood the core metric of that pattern.
Right. The first 2 women categorized their disguise based on action. Living things in barns that make a noise when you kick them. The blonde categorized her disguise based on the container itself.
She just thought about what normally goes inside a gunny sack.
Which makes logical sense in a vacuum.
Exactly. And this raises an important question about the mechanics of humor and how this text fundamentally subverts our expectations. The text methodically trains the listener and the policeman to expect an animal noise.
It's a rhythm.
It sets up a rhythm perfectly. Nudge, animal noise, rationalization. Nudge, animal noise, rationalization.
We are completely lulled into it.
And then it violently derails that expectation with an inanimate object loudly announcing its own name.
Under stress, her lateral thinking, that ability to creatively adapt to the situation like the first 2 women did, it just completely short-circuited.
Yeah.
She reverted to pure literal thinking.
I am in a sack. Sacks hold potatoes.
Which is factually true, but practically useless in this context.
Factually true, but contextually disastrous. It highlights a really fascinating aspect of human communication. We don't just communicate facts. We communicate within agreed-upon frameworks.
The unwritten rules of the exchange.
Yes. The first two women understood the framework was, I am pretending to be something that makes sense of this noise. The third woman shattered the framework by providing a fact that was fundamentally incompatible with the method of delivery.
The method of delivery being a human voice, it's like getting a text message from your dog. The medium itself ruins the disguise.
That's a great analogy.
The linguistic limitation we are talking about here is that an inanimate object cannot verbally self-identify. A potato cannot announce its own presence.
Precisely. It's
Yeah.
like if I asked you, do you have the time? And you just said yes and walked away.
Right. Technically an accurate answer.
You answered the literal question,
Yeah.
but you completely failed to grasp the lateral meaning of the social interaction. The blonde grasps the literal reality of her physical space, the sack, but entirely missed the lateral requirement of the disguise, which was explaining the movement.
It's a category error.
The linguistic limitation isn't just that potatoes can't talk. It's that language requires an internally consistent logic to function persuasively as a lie.
It's just brilliant. And, it's a classic joke setup. The brunette, the ginger, the blonde, which is a trope we've all heard a million times.
Right, the rule of three.
But the real punchline isn't just the trope itself. It's the absolute failure of logic. We are laughing at the sheer audacity of the semantic error. Her brain was moving 1,000,000 miles an hour, and it just grabbed the wrong file folder.
It grabbed the contents of a sack folder instead of the things that react to being kick folder.
And it is a perfectly distilled example of how fragile our perception of reality can be when someone manipulates the data we are receiving.
The narrative strips away all the noise to show us the bare mechanics of how we deceive others and, more importantly, how we deceive ourselves by eagerly accepting the first plausible explanation that comes along.
We build these little realities.
The policeman built a house of cards out of his own assumptions, and the third potato just blew it down.
So, what does this all mean? How do we take the lessons of the third potato and actually apply them? Because, obviously, we aren't usually hiding in barns from the cops.
The primary takeaway for you, the listener, is to be acutely aware of the gunny sacks in your own life.
We all have them.
We all face high-pressure moments where we have to make split-second decisions or formulate a rapid response. Maybe it's a tense meeting, a sudden argument, or an unexpected crisis at work.
When the boss is metaphorically kicking your sack.
Exactly. In those moments, we need to be careful that we don't fundamentally misunderstand the rules of the situation we are in. We have to make sure we aren't answering a question of what makes noise with a literal description of what belongs in this bag.
That makes total sense. It's a reminder to pause, even just for a microsecond, to ensure our response actually fits the parameters of the problem, rather than just grabbing the most immediate literal fact available to us.
Exactly. Don't let the adrenaline force you into extreme literal thinking. And on the flip side, it's also a glaring warning against falling into the policeman's trap of confirmation bias.
Just because the first two pieces of data confirm your theory, it doesn't mean you should stop critically evaluating the third piece of data.
If you expect an easy answer, you make yourself incredibly vulnerable to being fooled or missing a critical flaw in a plan.
That is fantastic advice. Don't be the one yelling potatoes in a quiet barn, and don't be the one who accepts potatoes as a valid excuse just because you want to go home.
It's a two-way street.
But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final lingering question to explore on your own. It's something that builds on this narrative but wasn't explicitly discussed in the text itself. Think about this. What actually happens in the immediate aftermath of the word potatoes?
Well, it's a great question. The text cuts off right at the punchline.
Exactly. Based on the policeman's established track record of extreme gullibility and his intense demonstrated desire to rationalize everything he hears to make his job easier. Whoa, it's just a dog. Oh, it's just a cat. Does his brain, in its desperate pursuit of an easy answer, force him to mutter, oh, it's just a potato, and just walk away?
That would be the ultimate victory of confirmation bias.
Right. I mean, really ponder that. Did the linguistic limitation actually get the women caught? Or is the policeman's confirmation bias so incredibly strong, so deeply entrenched, that he is willing to accept a talking vegetable just so he can finish his shift?
It's highly possible.
It's a hilarious and kind of terrifying thought experiment about the limits of human perception. Keep questioning the patterns around you, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.